Hello? Oh, is this on now? All right. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Should I just whistle? All right. Wow, today's been kind of great, hasn't it? This is my first time attending the Women's Summit, and I just have to say I feel extremely inspired. I think a lot of the messages really hit home for me. Diana Rothfuss, I'm from SAS, and we're definitely more than happy to sponsor this and a great supporter of the ACFE, and especially for women in the workplace. And before I introduce our keynote for the afternoon, Rachel Wilson, I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of my thoughts as to where I've been and just how the day's kind of gone. So when I started at SAS, I knew a little bit about fraud, but I knew one of the biggest things I really wanted to do was educate. So, there's a lot that people don't know about fraud. There's a lot that, we don't have out there from education perspective, not only from just the basics from a business, but just from a personal. I mean, I would never have known that I needed to protect my child's identity. And I have 3 of them. So I really think that when I started at SAS, I wanted to have a voice. I'm going on 6 years there, so doing a pretty good job. COVID, I hit a couple of speed bumps, but that actually breaks you in, right? Because you do a bunch of webinars, and then you finally get your voice out there. But I'd say internally, it definitely has hit some speed bumps, right? I think as a female working in IT, especially in financial services, it's very male-dominated. And sometimes it is really hard to hear a voice, even in the companies that support the best of diversity and female inclusion. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a meeting where somebody said, okay, you gonna take the notes today? And I was like, no, I'm not. Sorry, you can do that. I feel like we've probably all had that moment. But, I think one of the things for me is making sure that I educate, and I really just love what I do. And, when people ask, like, oh, what do you do? What's your role? And what is SAS? And SAS is a data analytics company, for those that don't know. But a lot of what we do is we empower a lot of the women in this room, the women that are online, by giving them the right data, by giving them the most efficient data possible so you guys can do your jobs, because you need a support system to do that. And it's us here in the room, but people, and I will be honest and say when I started at SAS, I didn't understand how powerful data is, but it is. It's very powerful. It allows us to do our jobs every day, which also allows us to be able to go home, spend time with our family, spend time on ourselves, spend time with our dogs, taking care of people, whatever brings you joy. A little bit about me. I have 3 myself, so I have twins that are 6, and my son that is going to be 9 in a month. And it was interesting because, kids are very, very curious, and they always want to know what you do. And I think for the last couple years, I've always said, oh, I work at a data analytics company. My son is very curious, by the way. Lots of questions about a lot of things. But they recently had a career day, and this was probably about 6 months ago. And he was like, Mom, what do you do? He's like, I don't understand. Do you work with numbers? I was like, well, I don't really work with numbers. And, it's interesting because it actually causes you to take pause and understand, like, what do I really do? And how can I make a soon-to-be 9-year-old understand that? So I just told him, I said, you know what, buddy? I was like, I help businesses and organizations find the bad guys you can't see. And of course, that was like 20 million questions. What do you mean bad guys? Like, do they have masks? Like, what do they do? It's like that just went down a rabbit hole in itself. But, at the end of it, I think it was maybe 15 minutes of trying to explain that. He was like, oh, so you're kind of like a hero. And honestly, he said that to me, and that caused me to take pause and kind of give me a little chills, and, he got a little emotional. You're like, oh, I impressed my kid. But, I mean, really, if you think about it, as females fighting fraud, we're all heroes. And I really think that if we take a deep look at what we do every single day and think about how much it really is impacting somebody. And it is. We're a hero to somebody. We are helping somebody. We're helping an organization. You know, we could even be helping ourselves. And I think, you know, if I learned anything out of today, I think the more that we can continue to look at ourselves as heroes and stand confident and proud and go out there, the more of this, you know, they can't bring us down. The bias can go away. We can continue fighting our fraud and, you know, just moving on. So I just personally want to say thank you. And now I will obviously introduce the star of the show this afternoon, Rachel Wilson. And I apologize, my notes. Let's see. So I'm pleased to introduce another heroic female fraud fighter for our final keynote speaker of the day. Rachel Wilson is the first ever head of cybersecurity for Morgan Stanley Wealth Management. In this role, she was responsible for ensuring the integrity and confidentiality of firm and client data. Rachel and her team drive innovation for new cybersecurity and authentication technology. Wilson was recognized by Morgan Stanley Wealth Management as part of the 2019 Makers Class, which is a program that honors women that serves as groundbreakers, innovators, and advocates. She was also named one of the top women in wealth tech in 2020 by ThinkAdvisor. Prior to joining Morgan Stanley Wealth, Wilson spent 15 years at the National Security Agency, where she held several key executive leadership positions, working to detect and disrupt terrorist and cyber exploitation activity against the US and its allies. So, without further ado, I welcome Rachel Wilson.
That was so great. Ooh. Diana, thank you so much for that warm introduction. And ladies of ACFE, thank you so much for having me this afternoon. I have been looking forward to this for months. This, to me, feels very much like my tribe. So I'm thrilled to be spending this afternoon with you, especially on International Women's Day. Heroes that we are, celebrating ourselves this afternoon. Couldn't be in better company. So by way of background, as Diana mentioned, I spent the first 15 years of my career at the NSA, the National Security Agency, where I had a few different jobs. I spent a couple of years running the NSA's counterterrorism operation. Think of this as using technical means to get onto the devices used by terrorists, their tablets, their smartphones, their laptops, with the goal of reading their email, listening to their phone calls, geolocating them, all the kinds of things that you would expect the NSA would be doing vis-a-vis terrorists. Then I spent a couple of years in the UK helping the British get ready for the 2012 Summer Olympics. Now, as you would expect, every 4 years when the Olympics rolls around, the eyes of the world are all honed on that city, that nation, that round of games, and that includes the eyes of terrorists, cyber actors, and fraudsters. All kinds of opportunities for bad activities when you put hundreds of thousands of people in one place. Leading up to those games in London, we had all kinds of terrorists, but I will tell you, the British, given their history, for better or worse, very well versed in terrorist plotting. They had the terrorist threats well in hand, so we Americans on site were very focused on the cyber threats to those Olympics. So this was the Chinese trying to hack into the clocks, the timers at the Olympic venues. You'll remember the Chinese had just hosted their very successful Olympic Games. They were definitely looking to cause some problems for the British. We had the Russians trying to hack into the databases that housed the Olympic drug testing records. This makes perfect sense now. Of course, made no sense to us at the time, but this was fraud at its finest, ladies. All kinds of miscreants looking to rub grit in the eyes of the British leading into those games. We spent 2.5 years building a security operations center in the basement of the American embassy, all to defend those games from all who would do it harm. Then the NSA called me and said, Rachel, you got to come back. And I said, no, because I really like it here in London. But I didn't really get a choice. And so I was lured back to suburban Maryland, right, not too far from here, where the NSA is headquartered. And I spent my last 5 years at the NSA in what I will tell you, ladies, was my dream job. I love my job now at Morgan Stanley, but my last 5 years at the NSA, the best job I could possibly imagine, and that was running the NSA's cyber exploitation operations mission. These are your American professional hackers. And so in this job, I would go to top universities and colleges all over the country and try to recruit the nation's best computer scientists and computer engineers to come be American hackers with me. And of course, these kids were getting amazing offers from Google and Amazon and Microsoft, and I'm like, but the government, I have no money. But I can give you the opportunity to do something that would be illegal anywhere else. And women, you know this particular ilk of young person, right? Where the opportunity to no longer be beholden to the Computer Fraud and Abuses Act actually was quite alluring. So we'd bring these kids in, we'd give them 18 months of highly classified training, and then we would conduct hundreds of operations a day, hacking into the networks of the North Koreans, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, with the goal of living in their networks, stealing the secrets out of their networks, giving them to our policymakers, our warfighters, all with the goal of keeping the United States and her allies safe. Now, I tell you, this is the best job ever, and this is true for two reasons. So first, for me personally, as a technologist, the opportunity to work basically every technology on the planet, including a bunch of technologies you can't even buy in the United States. Things we'd have to have diplomatically pouched in. So think like indigenous Iranian firewalls, cracked versions of Windows you can only find in North Korea. We'd bring them in, reverse engineer them, and then use those very same technologies back against our adversaries. But also a dream job because I got to lead a team of remarkable men and women, military and civilian folks from all over this country, in doing a mission that really was truly profound for us, bringing back what we used to call eye-watering intelligence. So information that was so remarkable that when you thought about the fact that you were going to put it on the president's desk the next morning, brought a little tear to your eye. But I also got to tell you, ladies, the people who sign up to do that job, how many of you are managers? These were really weird people. I had managerial problems in this job that I got to tell you, I do not miss at Morgan Stanley, where everyone showers basically every morning. But I will tell you, my two biggest managerial problems managing your American nation-state hackers, the first was, without a doubt, hygiene. To the point where I actually kept shower caddies in my office, soap, shampoo, deodorant. Folks would come in, get a little bit of the sniff test. Here you go, I'll see you in a half hour. It was really good we had showers in the basement. Some of these kids, real strange dudes. And it was definitely the dudes that had this problem. Other big problem, also very much a man problem. We can talk about this here today, right? Gaming addiction. I don't get it. We had to hire a psychologist on the staff. I was having Xbox interventions on a weekly basis. These kids couldn't show up to work on time. I'd say, Bob, why are you asleep? Don't you have an alarm clock? Well, the new Halo came out. And I'm going, what is a Halo? I have no idea what they're talking about. I haven't played a video game in my life. But I finally had to get myself the video game release schedule. And we had to plan the whole year calendar around this because gaming addiction was such a prevalent problem in the hacker community. Again, problems that I gratefully do not have in my day job now. So after 15 years at the NSA, dealing with these very strange, very talented, very interesting people, doing a job that, as you can tell, I loved, I decided to try my hand at something else. And I want to share with all of you on a personal level today just what that was like. 15 years in the black box that is the National Security Agency, no such agency, never say anything, never talking to anybody about what I did at work. All of a sudden, I decide to come to Morgan Stanley as the first head of cybersecurity for our wealth management business. I knew nothing about the private sector at all. I had never worked outside of government. I had never worked outside of like a top secret environment. I had no idea what a bank did, had no idea what a financial advisor was until I met mine. And, of course, at the same time, got to come home to my then 13 and 11-year-old and say, guess what, kids, great news. I quit my job. Those are terrifying words for your family. They said, well, I hope you have a new job, Mom. Yeah, I got a new job. But, you know, and we as women, right, we never make a decision by ourselves, right, because we're all daughters and mothers and sisters and cousins. I mean, we got so many things connecting us to the rest of the world. So I go home and say, I have unilaterally quit my job, and guess what? We're moving from our cute little like suburban life and your adorable little Quaker school. We're gonna move to Manhattan. It's gonna be great. It was eventually great, but that took about a year. And you could imagine my 13-year-old daughter, she's like, Mom, I hate you. Why are you doing this to me? You've ruined my life. Lots of tears, lots of screaming. Moving to Manhattan, trying to buy a co-op there. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. Getting my kids into New York private schools, that is an un-American experience. All kinds of things about that. But a year later, I will tell you, my kids did figure out that being a teenager in Manhattan is actually a pretty sweet deal. And I'm, of course, trying to figure out what the heck my new job is. So I show up at Morgan Stanley, and I'm like, okay, I'm the head of cybersecurity. What is that? I don't know what that is. I mean, if you want me to hack the North Koreans, but that's illegal now. So what am I supposed to do? I didn't have a predecessor. I didn't have a team. Literally show up by myself and ask my boss, you know, once I've kind of found the ladies' room and my desk, and I'm not inadvertently ending up in Brooklyn on a regular basis because I took the wrong train. That happened a lot. I've still been to Brooklyn more by accident than intentionally. But I'm finally getting to work on a regular basis. This is good. This is progress. I go to my boss, great guy, and I said, okay, Chris, you hired me. You want me to do cybersecurity. What do you want me to do? And he's like, well, Rachel, just keep us safe. Oh. Well, with that kind of direction, what could go wrong, right? Like, I have no idea how to interpret that. And actually, Diana, it reminds me very much of the story you told about your son asking you, you know, what you do at work. Because I'm thinking there, okay, keep us safe. And I was reminded of a conversation that I had had with my daughter when I was working at the NSA, and she was about 6 years old. She came to me and she said, Mom, you know, I know you do secret stuff, but I've figured it out. And I'm going, uh-oh. Am I talking in my sleep? Like, how does she know? The terrorists, like, how does she know about this? But she says, Mom, you keep us safe. I get that. I'm like, okay, phew, good. That's what she thinks. That's great. That is what I do, and that's as far as it goes. But I got to ask her, right? Well, what is it, Grace, that you think I keep you safe from? And I'm hoping she's not saying like bin Laden and things like this. She says, well, I know what you keep us safe from. Bees, sharks, bears. She had a very zoological interpretation of what the NSA did. So I'm sitting there thinking, I hope that Morgan Stanley is not hoping that I'm going to be protecting them from bees and bears and sharks. Because I've had that misinterpretation before. But ladies, I did exactly what any of you would have done. I figured it out, right? Took about 6 months, poking and prodding and listening and asking lots of questions. And in about 6 months, I figured out what my job was. And now my role at Morgan Stanley is actually all of cybersecurity, data protection, fraud prevention for all of our clients, the resilience and business continuity of our platforms, and about 75 of the smartest people I've ever worked for now, fully focused on this. So 6 years in, I think I know what it means to keep us safe in this role, but we have a lot of ground to cover this afternoon, and I am so excited to be talking to all of you about this. For me, you can probably tell, combating fraud and protecting our entities from all of these actors that would do us harm, and I think this is true for many of us, this is not a job. This is not even a career. If we're doing this right, this work that we do day in and day out, it is a calling. And that is firmly how I feel about my job today. So what I want to share with all of you this afternoon is a little bit about the sources of my sleepless nights in this job. What kinds of things keep me up at night at Morgan Stanley, trying to protect this big bank from cyber actors, from cyber criminals, from fraudsters who would do us harm in all of these various ways. I want to talk about what we need to be doing to protect our customers. I don't know about all of you ladies, but what I found during the pandemic, our customers got really dumb. I mean, I love them, but they started doing all kinds of stupid things. They're picking up the phone, convinced that Bill Gates is calling them, telling them they have malware on their computer. I had one of these just this morning. Diana, absolutely convinced Bill Gates had called her, was telling her that she had malware. She finally admits she has a MacBook. Going, well, why did you not put these pieces together, right? But our clients, right, our customers, they started making a lot of mistakes. They're picking up the phone. They're clicking on links. They're downloading attachments. They're giving up their social security number, their one-time passcode, doing all the things that we spent years telling them not to do. Our job is increasingly to protect them from themselves. So we're going to cover all that ground. And then I want to share with you some trends that I see in the space, especially as a result of Russian activity over the last year. A lot of people aren't talking about it, but I feel that for us as fraud professionals, it's crucial to understand. All right, so does that sound like a plan? Okay, and I will tell you, I know you guys all have the app, so if you want to be sending us questions, I am happy to take questions on the fly. We can take questions at the end. Very happy to take this conversation anywhere you all would like. So if we take it from the top, what am I worried about in this job? Over the last 6 years, my sources of sleepless nights, top of the list, without a doubt, maybe a surprise, North Korea. Why? North Korea is a nation that is funding its government by committing fraud. At the highest levels, that is the source of their gross domestic product. Why? Well, of course, they are up against staunch international sanctions. They have no domestic economy to speak of, and yet they're trying to fund a wildly expensive missile and nuclear program. So how are they doing this? How are they funding their government in 2023? Well, they've essentially made it a major plank of their national strategy that they're going to fund their government by hacking into banks and financial institutions, by defrauding individuals, taking all of that money, and putting it right into their missile and nuclear programs. And they are funding this bank hacking and fraud strategy at a very high level. So estimates now have it at 7,000 people within the North Korean government who just have bank hacking as their full-time job. And those ranks just continue to grow. Now, I tell my kids all the time how fortunate they are that they did not grow up in North Korea. My daughter says that having me as a mom feels a little bit like growing up in North Korea, but this is not fair. She gets a lot of autonomy. But in any case, in North Korea, every 11-year-old child is administered an aptitude test. You score best and brightest on that North Korean aptitude test, and you are immediately on-ramped into the bank hacking program. So these kids moved away from their families into dormitories, raised, trained to be bank hackers from the age of 11. This is unfortunate, this level of resourcing. What is also unfortunate for all of us playing defense here is that the North Koreans have proven quite adept at their bank hacking strategy in particular. So when I talk to our board about this, and I explain, the Bank of Bangladesh heist, right, where the North Koreans hacked into the central bank of Bangladesh over a long weekend and carted off close to $100 million, they're taken aback. But then I tell them, the thing to be aware of, right, is that the North Koreans were a typographical error away, literally a spelling mistake away from that being close to $1 billion. These are non-trivial dollar sums we are talking about here. And this, again, was not a one-off for the North Koreans. This is their strategy for funding their government. It is fraud at a nation-state scale, so much so that last year the United Nations published a report supporting the allegations of 27 countries around the world, all of whom are asserting, correctly in my view, that they have been victims of North Korean government hacking fraud over the last 3 years to the tune of more than $3 billion. Now, all of us, as fraud professionals, should be appalled by this, but as individuals, we should also be quite worried because we know that that money is going into their missile and nuclear program, which is terrifying on a whole new level. So lots to be worried about there. At a level right below North Korea, but not far below, I worry a lot in this job about Iran. Now, Iran, of course, very different animal. They are not fraudsters. They are not hacking us for money. They have recognized that cyber represents an asymmetric threat. You think about it, right? Building an aircraft carrier, that's a decade-long project. Building a nuclear weapon, thank goodness, has proven to be very challenging for Iran. But what has Iran done in the past when tensions get tight with the West? Well, what they've done, literally in the past, is put 40 guys in the basement of a building in Tehran and managed to wreak havoc on Wall Street. Those of you in financial services know this. You go back to 2012, 2014 timeframe. We had the Iranians going bank to bank to bank on Wall Street, 46 banks over 2.5 years, conducting wildly disruptive denial of service attacks, all in retaliation for economic sanctions, military action, American cyber activities. Lots to be worried about in that space. Things get tight with Iran again. All of us need to be braced for impact. But what is the big change over the last 5 years? This is what you ladies as fraud professionals are dealing with day in, day out. If you went back in time 5 years ago, the vast majority of malicious cyber activity that we saw on the internet was nation states, right? It was the Americans, it was the British, it was the Israelis, Chinese, Russians, North Korea, all of these countries hacking each other, in some cases to steal money, but more frequently to steal intellectual property, to steal intelligence, to conduct espionage operations. Now, make no mistake, all of that nation-state cyber activity is still going on. It's going on at a greater scale than ever, but it is now dwarfed by the volume of malicious cyber activity that is financially motivated and that is criminal in nature. 75% of the malicious cyber activity we see on the internet today is coming after entities not because of the information they have, but because of the money they have. These are professional cyber criminal syndicates, huge upswing in the last 5 years, using publicly available cyber tools and tradecraft that are now available for sale, for rent, on the dark web, and that are easy enough to learn. How do these hackers learn? They simply watch YouTube videos, the same way that our kids learn anything new. And for those of us playing defense, it can be very difficult to tell, right? Who is a nation-state cyber actor trying to rob us versus what is a cyber criminal entity that is trying to rob us? Why is it so hard to tell? It's because it's frequently the same people. Think about these North Korean government hackers we just talked about. How much are they getting paid? Right, next to nothing, pittance. There's no money in North Korean government hacking. So what's the pitch? What's the Benny? What's the deal for these North Korean hackers? Well, it's that they get to take that cyber toolkit home with them nights and weekends and use it for their own personal betterment. And we see this not just in North Korea, but in Russia, China, all across Eastern Europe. Hackers that hack for their government by day and then work as hackers for hire nights and weekends. Now, as a hacker for hire, I might be working for another government on contract. I might be working as a hacktivist. These are hackers that hack for political reasons. We thought hacktivism was dead until Russia, Ukraine, and then we found that groups like Anonymous, professional hacktivists, alive and well. But I would argue that for those of us in the fraud space, hacktivists, internally, we are all just one disgruntled employee away from having our own internal hacktivist problem. And my guess is many of you have experienced that. But some of these professional hackers are working for these cyber criminal syndicates, and they are coming after literally anyone with two nickels to rub together. Anyone who thinks that they can hide in the noise in 2023, I challenge you, you're wrong. We are seeing hackers take a completely egalitarian, opportunistic approach in coming after people and coming after entities of all sizes, all shapes, all characteristics. Now, I want to give you an example of the kind of cyber criminal syndicate activity that I see in my day job all the time. And many of you will have experienced this exact same thing, your classic credential validation attack. This, of course, the hacker goes out to the dark web, buys 10 million credential pairs, logins and passwords. Who else is getting the Uber credentials like every week now, right? The Uber gets hacked, all of those logins and passwords get dumped on the dark web. Why does the new hacker want to buy all the Uber logins and passwords? You all know this, ladies, right? It's because we are all, as are our customers, victims of that particular form of human frailty that causes us to reuse the same password again and again and again. And so the hacker is hoping that maybe the password you were using at Uber is the same one you are using for your bank account. And so the hacker is going to take those 10 million logins and passwords, throw them against your company, your institution's authentication gateway, your front door, just to see what sticks. Now, the hacker does not have high hopes, right? He knows that this is going to be a very small percentage. So what does he do to speed up the process, right? This is all about scope, scale, and velocity. Goes back to the dark web and rents a botnet. Botnet, of course, is just thousands of highly hackable endpoint devices. These are your Internet of Things type devices, smart TVs, smart refrigerators, I kid you not. My last botnet attack was literally a horde 10,000 GE smart refrigerators, all with manufacturer default credentials where the hacker had managed to script up an attack leveraging those smart refrigerators and those millions of Uber credentials. I've all of a sudden got 10,000 refrigerators throwing 10 million credentials against my front door in the middle of the night. That was not a great phone call to receive. But even more so, that was a surreal conversation to have with our board of directors. They're looking at me like, Rachel, you're protecting us from refrigerators. What? But this is true, right? That's what these botnets are made up of. Anything internet connected becomes a means of attack, becomes a way of breaching our perimeter. So what do we do about these things? Well, of course, we all want botnet protection. We want our customers, our clients using strong passwords. We all want to be moving to stronger forms of authentication and moving away from passwords altogether. But this, of course, is an area where we could have a much longer conversation on what to be doing in this space. But when you look at this cyber criminal syndicate activity, and we're seeing it with varying degrees of sophistication, this is what we see, right? Again, it's all about scope, scale, and velocity, doing what a traditional fraudster would have done onesie-twosie 5-10 years ago, now at cyber-enabled scale. The last risk that I want to share with all of you this afternoon that has been a source of sleepless nights for me, and definitely a significant source of fraud in financial services in particular, has been the risk around mobile malware. So this is the malicious software that's targeting the mobile apps on our phones and is targeting the mobile apps we produce for our customers and our clients. Now, the particular strain of Marcher I want to describe to you this afternoon, the bane of my existence for these last 6 years at Morgan Stanley, is a particular strain out there called Marcher. It's run out of Estonia by a quite talented hacking gang there, and it has been targeting the 40 largest American bank applications for the better part of the last decade. The way Marcher works, it starts by socially engineering our customer into downloading this Marcher application onto her phone. Now, you think about it. None of us would knowingly download a malicious app onto our phone. But unfortunately, these apps never present themselves as malicious, right? They don't come with a skull and crossbones on them. Instead, they are always going to present themselves as something benign, something innocuous. Marcher loves to pretend to be solitaire. So my customer thinks she's downloading this nice solitaire app onto her phone. Now she's got this malicious software on her phone. The next thing Marcher's going to do is socially engineer my customer into giving it admin level privileges on her device, so a deep level of access on her phone. How is it going to get these privileges? It is simply going to ask her for them. So you think about it, we all download apps, right? And they want a lot from you. They want access to your contacts, your location, your photos. We just click yes, 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 because we want to get on with using the app. Hopefully we don't do that. But if we did that in this case, we would give Marcher admin level privileges on our device, which of course is what's going to come back to bite us. Now my customer doesn't know she's got Marcher on her phone. She launches her mobile banking app. Marcher detects that she has launched her mobile banking app, and it throws up an overlay right on top of that application that looks exactly like what she's expecting to see. Same colors, same branding, looks exactly like her bank's mobile application, but of course is commanded and controlled on the back end by the fraudster. Customer doesn't know this, so she enters her username and password. She wants to log in. Now her username and password are compromised, known to the fraudster. But it is what happens next that is most insidious here. Because of course, what is the fraudster going to do now that he has her username and password? He's going to try to log into her bank account from his device. But we, fraud professionals, are smarter than that, right? We're going to immediately see that this is not a client's legitimate login, right? We're going to see this is not the client's IP address. This is not the time zone they usually log in from. This is not their browser. This is not their registered device. My client's not usually in Nigeria. We are going to recognize that this is very unlikely to be our legitimate customer. And what do as fraud professionals when we have these doubts? We step up that individual, right? We're going to require an additional form of authentication. We're going to send that customer a one-time passcode text message. Great idea normally, right? What's the problem here? Fraudster's on the phone. And because our customer gave them admin level privileges on the device, fraudster can just go into that text message queue, pull out that one-time passcode we sent, meet our step-up authentication challenge. He's off to the races, trying to commit fraud in our customer's account, can actually go back to their phone, delete that one-time passcode we sent. Our customer never even knows she was prompted. This, again, the bane of my existence, 40 largest banks, we're talking about this kind of malware all the time. Truly, like so many things in the fraud space, we are in a cat and mouse game with these fraudsters when it comes to mobile malware. So we talked about all these things, my sleepless nights in this job. What am I worried about for all of us as a collective? Diana's exactly right. We got to be working all of this together. What do I worry about for all of us and for the customers and companies that we support? Well, last year for me was the year of the 3 R's: Russia, ransomware, and resilience. Now let's start with Russia. Now I'll ask you ladies a question. There's a spectrum of thinking right now. We're a year into this Russia-Ukraine conflict, devastating to watch, something we are all having to see. What have the implications been for the United States? Now people, of course, you remember, we were all braced for impact, right? Biden was tweeting about cyber threats. We were all concerned the Russians were going to take down critical infrastructure. We were, for about a month, panicked. And what happened? Not a damn thing. And then we were all just confused. Happy, right? But confused. So there's one school of thinking that says, oh, I guess, Putin and the Russians, they're just not doing anything. They're sitting on their hands. We know they have this huge cyber army, but I guess they're just not putting it to work. Ladies, who believes that? I am with you, right? That is almost certainly not the case. Then there's the other end of the spectrum, which says, actually, the Russians are everywhere all the time already. We're already so hosed that they don't even have to do anything else because it's that bad. I don't believe that either. What increasingly we as experts in this space believe is that instead the Russians are taking what is a really savvy and sophisticated play on all of this. And they are obfuscating what is truly Russian nation-state level cyber and fraud activity to appear to be criminal in nature. Which is brilliant, right? You think about it. We just talked about this huge upswing in cyber criminal activity, about the fact that 75% of that malicious activity is financially motivated. Brilliant of the Russians to say, let's just look like cyber criminals. Let's look like fraudsters. Let's use the same tactics as essentially a bloodletting of American industry. And that's exactly what they've done over the last year. I want to give you an example from the financial services perspective. Many of you, of course, will be familiar with this because you live in this trench with me day in, day out. If you went back in time 18 months ago and you talked to any of the big American commercial banks, so think your Bank of America, your Wells, your Citi, all PNC, all of these big American commercial banks, they would tell you on a typical day at PNC, 30 to 40% of the accounts that were opened every day were fraudulent, which is a jaw-dropping number at face value. But you all as fraud professionals are like, well, yeah, of course. 30, 40%, they were doing great. That's actually fine. And we know why they were doing this, right? These are huge human farms in Bangladesh and Sierra Leone and Ghana, huge farms of people sitting next to big stacks of stolen identities, creating fake bank accounts at multiple banks, linking those bank accounts to each other, and harvesting that 75-cent micro deposit that your bank sends the other bank when you link two accounts. When we do that micro deposit exchange, these fraudsters were harvesting that 75 cents hundreds of times a day across hundreds of people, very large scale, creating these huge volumes of fraudulent accounts that we then had to go to lengths to shut down, to prevent them from being used as money mules and all the other things that can go wrong when you have these fraudulently created accounts on your books. But 30 to 40%, why weren't we doing more? Now, you all know this. It's because doing more would have cost more than 75 cents. And so the math just said, keep it coming, right? 30 to 40% a day, I can live with that. But what happened over the next 6 months, from 18 months ago to about a year ago? We, of course, all talk to each other in financial services, and PNC is like, we're kind of at more like 50% a day. And B of A is like, yeah, we're hitting 60. Suddenly, the numbers are getting worse and worse. Fast forward to February of 2022, we're on a call on a Saturday morning, and the big banks are all at like 80% fraud every day. 80% of the accounts being opened were fraudulent. You get to March 2022, it was 95%. So what happened? Suddenly that 75 cents was very far from being palatable. The losses were in the millions at this point in terms of this fraudulent activity. It was more than the banks could sustain. And so what did many of them choose to do in March of 2022? They took their new account opening flow off of the internet. For 2 weeks, if you wanted to open an account at PNC, you had to walk into a branch. The timing, ladies, I don't think is a coincidence. Same time period, March 2022, millions of Ukrainian refugees are trying to open bank accounts in the United States. Very same weeks that it suddenly became impossible to do that online. Definitely not a coincidence. We were all confused at the time. I don't think any of us are confused now. So what had appeared to be increasingly scaled criminal activity suddenly became a distributed denial of service attack against the American financial sector in that very same moment that Ukrainians were looking for a safe place to put money. Wildly expensive for American industry. And now, as I spend a great deal of my time talking to people in other industries, exactly the same kind of bloodletting that we were seeing at the hands of clearly the Russians in this very same time period. So don't think for a minute that we haven't been under attack. That attack has just been very well guised as criminal in nature, when in fact, when you look at the artificial intelligence, the scaling, the scripting behind it, there's no question that there's a Russian hand there. But of course, by attacking us in this way, they avoid anything overtly escalatory, which is why I will tell you with respect that it's quite an impressive approach that they've taken. So with all of that said around Russia, what else have we seen? Things out there like ransomware impacting all of us, impacting all of our clients, our customers, and increasingly becoming one of the biggest sources of fraud losses that we are seeing across the United States. So easily the most lucrative form of cyber attack going back in the last year, $20 billion in losses to ransomware campaigns just in the United States last year. And these losses just continue to grow. They continue to amplify. And these ransomware attacks, far more sophisticated than what we would have experienced 5 years ago. 5 years ago, you got a pop-up on your screen that said, call this number and give us $500. Not a great day, but a survivable day. Ransomware attacks today started 6 months ago. If you get attacked Monday of next week, I guarantee that actor was in your environment close to a year ago. Hacker gets in, the first thing they're going to do to your company, your institution, your element, is they're going to figure out what you value most, what you would be willing to pay money to have saved, restored, or protected. Now, if you're a bank, right, that could be customer data. If you're a nonprofit, that could be donor data. We see this at universities. This is employee data. This is alumni data, houses of worship. It's your constituency if you're in government. If you're a school district, it's student data. All of us, to Diana's point, right, we're all stewards and custodians of data in this environment. And with that data comes tremendous risk and comes tremendous opportunity for these fraudsters. They're going to get into your environment. They're going to figure out what you would pay to get back. Customer data, employee data, proprietary data, you name it. And they're going to take whatever it is they think you value most. Your data's gone. You don't know it's gone because nothing bad has happened yet. Business is going fine. You come in the following Monday and all of a sudden, nothing works. Desktops are down, production environment is down, back-end database is corrupted, front-end website isn't working. Not a good day. You come in and you get the first of 3 very spooky phone calls. First phone call from the hacker is going to say, you'll notice that your systems are not working this morning. If you would like to have your systems restored, your data restored, your desktops to function, your website to exist again, we're going to need $2 million in this cryptocurrency equivalent in this wallet in South Africa by 2 o'clock. This is not a good day. Maybe you pay, maybe you don't. Of course, I never recommend paying a ransom because what happens when you pay? You show your willingness to pay, and you end up on the sucker list on the dark web. Call this person. They are happy to give you money. Break their stuff, they will send you cash. You don't want to be on that list. But maybe you pay, right? Because you got no choice. You pay, you get your systems back. These hackers are great. They are very concerned about their reputations. They are fixated with customer service. Soon as you pay, they will get their lead IT guy on the phone with your IT department. They will be working hard to get your data restored. They'll even send you a survey afterwards. How was your ransomware experience with us? Very reputationally concerned. Why? Because they want you to tell everyone else, oh yeah, we got hacked by this group. It was great. It was totally fine. As soon as we paid, everything was fixed. We were back up and running. They want you to have a delightful ransomware experience with them. So maybe you pay, your systems are restored, but they're not done with you. So the call the next day, while we were in your environment, we stole all your customer data, and we kind of stole all of your employee social security numbers too, and all those credit card numbers you had on file, yep, we got those now as well. So, but we're good guys, and if you don't want us to sell all of that stuff on the dark web, we're happy not to. We just need another $2 million. So, and you know how to get it to us. You showed us. You can get money to the wallet. So just send us a new $2 million today, and we will promise you, what is this, honor amongst thieves here, we will promise you not to sell your stuff on the dark web. For this reason, we are seeing more and more companies that actually don't pay the ransom to have their systems restored because they are able to restore their systems. 3 days later, they pay the ransom anyway because they don't want their customer data, their employee data, to be sold on the dark web. So maybe you pay the second ransom, maybe you don't. But ladies, the hackers are still not done. This fraudster has more work to do in his mind because the fraudsters have all figured out that they want a continuous revenue stream, just like the rest of us. They want a Netflix-style billing model. And so the third phone call, your systems are working. We didn't sell your data on the dark web, but that was yesterday. And if you would like your systems to continue to work, if you would like us to not sell your data tomorrow, we're going to need a monthly fee. And we're going to need that fee in perpetuity. And in exchange for this monthly fee, we will agree to keep your systems up and running. New IT department, run straight out of Estonia. We will promise not to sell your data at any point in the future. And here's the kicker. They will actually commit to helping protect you from other hacking groups that want to come in and do the exact same thing. So I sadly have hundreds of entities that I work with now that experienced ransomware attacks over the last 2 years and that are now, not happily, but very willingly paying a monthly fee to have these hackers, in theory, protect them from other criminal hacking groups because they know their name is on that sucker list. And this is not limited to large companies. We see this at small companies, mid-sized companies, and again, more and more frequently, nonprofits, houses of worship. We just worked through a major case with one of the largest universities in the United States. I am not kidding when I tell you the hackers got in and figured out that universities are deeply dependent on alumni. So they stole all of the alumni data and encrypted the alumni database. Business development shop could no longer send all those mailings that we so throw away quickly when our universities send them. Couldn't send their mailings, couldn't call, they didn't have their data. So they paid to get their systems restored. And the hacker said, well, while we were there, we stole all of your alumni records. And they were pretty interesting. And the alumni department says, well, what do you mean? And of course, the alumni department was getting a little creative with what they put in the records, and you all as fraud professionals will appreciate this. They had started including fields like prior donations, estimated net worth, political affiliation, gender identity, all kinds of things that might be really nice to know if you were trying to solicit donations from someone, but would be absolutely toxic if released in the public domain and associated with that university. So you better believe this university, with its deep pockets, is continuing to pay big money not to have that data sold on the dark web. And you could imagine how much their board of trustees were displeased when they heard exactly what had been going on in the alumni department. So these sorts of things, I tell you these tales as caution, right? All of us need to be thinking with this in mind. So what do we do about this, right? Thinking about ransomware as a potential massive source of fraud to us and to our customers, what steps do we need to take? Well, first and foremost, we've got to keep all of our systems fully patched and up to date. And when I say a patch, I just mean the software updates that we all receive every week, every month, right? So whether you're a Windows person, a Mac person, an Android person, you are constantly receiving software updates, that new iOS version. And you're doing, hopefully not, what so many people do, But this is the argument I have with my daughter all the time. She says, Mom, I looked at the new iOS update. There's no new fonts. There's no new emojis. I don't really need this. And I can't go 20 minutes without my phone, right? Like I can't reboot. I might get a text. Why is it so important to keep our devices, our operating systems, our browsers, the apps on our phone fully patched and up to date? It's because all software manufacturers are constantly discovering new flaws, new bugs, new vulnerabilities in their code. They are fixing those newly discovered vulnerabilities, and they are issuing to us as consumers the fix in the form of that patch, that software update. And when that patch is released, that is our greatest point of risk. We enter into a race condition with the hackers. For us, again, that patch is the solution to the security vulnerability we didn't even know we had. But for the hackers, that patch is an opportunity, right? That hacker, that fraudster is going to reverse engineer that patch, discover the underlying vulnerabilities that it mitigates, and weaponize those vulnerabilities against anyone who has not yet patched. That means the onus is on us as consumers to make sure that we execute that patch quickly and comprehensively across our environment so that we are effectively immunized against those vulnerabilities and they can't be used against us. So take this home, ask this of your IT departments. You got to be patching on a regular basis. Number one risk we see to our customers is when they are using out-of-date software. The customer who is running Windows 95 is going to be defrauded in any and every way under the sun in this day and age. So staying patched, crucially important. Number one thing you can do to prevent that ransomware attack. But what if we decide, and I think we should, to view that ransomware attack as a when, not an if? What do we need to be doing to be prepared? First and foremost, we've got to have our systems and our data backed up. Now, everyone is going to tell you they got their data backed up. And most people will tell you, like I do, that they use a 3-2-1 backup strategy. 3 copies of your data in 2 geographically dispersed locations, one of which is not connected to your network, right? Cold storage, off the grid, offline. For me, all of my customer data gets backed up to physical tape every night and put in the side of a mountain. Not everybody needs to do that, but when you're a heavily regulated bank, this is what you got to do. But all of us, 3 copies, 2 locations, one that is not connected to your networks. That's great, but the biggest problem that I saw last year, company, I'd sit down with them, they'd say, Rachel, we're good, we got backups, we'll be fine. 2 weeks later, they get hacked, and uh-oh, the person who set up that backup system doesn't work here anymore. And we never actually practiced restoring from backups, and so we don't know how to do it. We never really did that. And so all of a sudden, what was supposed to be 4 hours of downtime turns into 2 days, and next it's 2 weeks, and next thing you know, the head of the IT department's been fired. That's good, but nobody knows how to run anything from those backups. They're corrupted, they're overwritten. Again, lots of problems. Practicing restoring from your backups on a regular basis is crucial. Being able to restore your systems from bare metal, absolutely critical. Practicing that, having the muscle memory as an institution to know how to do this, go home, challenge your IT departments on exactly this question. So what else do we need to be doing? Thinking in this space, not just as fraud professionals in our individual capacities, but also in all of the other ways that we live our lives, right? As mothers, as daughters, as sisters, as friends. There are lots of things that we can be doing to be safer, less fraud-prone cyber citizens in this world. So I want to close this afternoon with a couple of quick tips, things that we can all be doing, things that we can be taking back to our colleagues and our families. We talked about the importance of patching, keeping all of our systems fully patched and up to date. We talked about the pain that are passwords, right? We're all using the same password again and again and again. I met with a client this morning, Barbara, lovely woman. I get the feeling I'm going to be spending a lot of time with her. We talk. She's the one who thought that Bill Gates had called her. She actually went so far as to take $15,000 out of ATMs, put it in a brown paper envelope, and take it to a smoke shop on the Upper East Side before it dawned on her that something about this might not be right. It was quite a morning. So we get to the end of the conversation this morning, and she says, well, Rachel, you mentioned I shouldn't be using the same password, and I have been using Kittens25 everywhere for the last decade. Like, Barbara, that's really bad. You got to be using unique, complex passwords, or I'm giving her my whole talk about how important this is. She says, Rachel, I hear you. I'm going to add an exclamation point. Kittens25 for the next decade is not what I was looking for. But you all know these customers as well as I do, right? They are creatures of habit. She really didn't want to do this. So what is the advice that I give our customers and our employees? It's that we should all be using password manager apps. Who all is using these? Which one are you using? LastPass is great. Yep, Keeper, 1Password, Dashlane, I love them. The tech behind them, all largely the same. What they do is create for you unique, complex passwords. They store those passwords for you in a cryptographically sound way, so an encrypted state. And then when you need to access these passwords, they will autofill them right into the password field for you based on either a passphrase or, even better, that biometric on your phone. Now, why do I love these password manager apps so much? First, they're going to give you a crazy, complex, lengthy password, right? Random alphanumerics that we as human beings are terrible at coming up with, but the computers are really good at generating. No more Kittens25 everywhere all the time. They're going to give you a password that is maximally lengthy. So if it's a 50-character password field, they will give you a 50-character password. That's a really good thing. We all know that length is strength when it comes to passwords. But my favorite thing about these password manager apps is the storage of your passwords, the fact that they store them in an encrypted state. Any of us today who are storing our passwords in a notes file on our phone? Uh-oh. That Word document or Excel file on your home computer, not a good place to be storing our passwords. My least favorite, though, the Post-it note under the keyboard. We are fooling no one with this. People have figured out I go visit a Morgan Stanley branch, first thing I do, flip all the keyboards. It's become a problem in Manhattan, with so much crime on the rise. We are seeing burglaries now where the only thing they look for is the Post-it note under the keyboard. They get into your apartment, flip the keyboard, take the password, they're out the door. They don't want your silver, they don't want your jewelry. That's hard work. Passwords not. People are writing down passwords in 2023. I'm not saying you deserve it, but the fraud is coming. You all know this. So the storage of your passwords in that cryptographically sound way, auto-filled into that password field for you, much safer way of doing business with the internet. Lastly, this afternoon, ladies, and you all as fraud professionals will appreciate this. Again, you are my tribe, and I'm so happy to be spending this afternoon with you. All of our customers underestimate the risk around physical paper. People assume, right, 20 years in the cybersecurity space, again, this is my calling, all I've ever done, they think that I'm going to leave this room today, put on my tinfoil hat, go back into my cave, that I am off the grid. But you ladies won't be surprised to hear, I do all of my banking and investing online. I'm the most digitally enabled person you'll ever meet. Why? Well, first, it's because I have a lot of confidence in the authentication technology that my team builds and in the apps that we facilitate. But the real risk that I mitigate when I do my banking and investing online is the risk around physical paper. We looked back at all of the fraud that our clients experienced over the 2 years of the pandemic, and we discovered, and I was shocked by this, that we could have prevented 70% of it by simply getting rid of 2 particular pieces of paper. Statements and checks. Of course, you guys already know the answer to this. Statements, right? Our clients who are having their statements pulled out of their mailbox before they even receive them. who are throwing them away without shredding them, or God love them, the clients who are keeping every single paper statement I have sent them since the dawn of time in a large unlocked filing cabinet in their home office, totally underestimating the number of people with physical access to their homes over the course of a year. We had a huge problem 4 years ago now in South Florida. So we had a crime ring in South Florida, couldn't figure out why our Miami-based clients were experiencing fraud at 4 times the rate of the national average. We dug into it, we got the FBI involved, and we discovered that the 2 largest painting companies in Miami had been infiltrated by a fraud ring. The fraudsters would join the painting crew. One member of the crew is the criminal, get into your house, they're painting away. The fraudster goes into the home office, opens all the drawers, all the filing cabinets, and took pictures of everything. Now, didn't take anything and put everything back just as it had been. This client has no idea that anything has been stolen. Hacker then waits 3 months for the metaphorical paint to dry, and then was calling the call centers of this person's financial institutions, impersonating them. This is wholesale identity theft, right? I know everything about this person. I've got their social security number, mother's maiden name, tax ID. I've got their birth certificate. I've got their marriage license. I have their statements. Could combat any KYC, could combat any knowledge-based authentication. Fraudsters get in thousands of calls to our call center pretending to be our clients. The common denominator was paint. Moral of the story, we've got to get our customers digitized. We've got to get them off of all of this paper. And at a minimum, we've got to get them keeping that paper under lock and key. This cannot be the wild, wild west that it has been. And of course, as you ladies all know, what is the other piece of paper I would get rid of? It's those personal checks. Is everyone else just dealing with check fraud at like a scale that is mind-boggling? Highest rates we've seen since the early 80s. People do not seem to understand that if I put a personal check in the black box that is the US Postal Service, an average of 12 hands touch that check between you and its intended recipient. You want to vouch for every single one of those 12 people? And my favorite, my customers who put their mail on hold for 6 months. I mean, and I tell you, as a former federal servant, we got bad eggs, bad apples in every pocket of these businesses. Mail employees will just cherry pick out of that stored mail. They get a wedding signature, they get some tax documents, they figure out where you're banking. You're making it easy at that point. Anything we're putting in physical mail, I think, is a tremendous risk at this point. But that personal check, and you all know this, anyone who gets a hold of that personal check can simply walk into any Costco in America and print new checks in your name against your account. Your name and address are right there on the side. Your routing and account number right there on the bottom. This is easy. Not illegal to print your own checks. What is illegal is what they do next, which is write them all over town against your account. We've had clients go through 3, 4 checkbooks in a year because they're writing personal checks at scale and are shocked when they're having them manipulated, washed, reprinted, rebranded. Moving our customers to electronic bill payments that are strongly authenticated, that are monitored, that have the fraud protection that we all work so hard day in and day out to build. We got to do this year. So again, people think we should be off the grid. I would argue exactly the opposite. Digital storage, moving to the cloud, all the things that people think are scary are actually exactly where we need to be. All right, we have a couple minutes left. We've had a couple questions come in. I'm, of course, happy to take any questions you guys might want to ask. We have a question here. How do we respond to situations where customers are charged extra to make digital payments as opposed to mailing checks? If that is the case, and I'm guessing the person asking this question is not the one insisting on the cost for the digital payment, we're actually trying to incentivize the exact opposite. So I am now, if my customer says they don't want to receive a digital statement, I charge them 25 cents a month to get a paper statement. We should be incentivizing the behaviors we want. I want my clients to say, don't even send me a checkbook. I'll give you a discount if you don't want a checkbook. These kinds of things where we're actually putting our money where our mouth is to incentivize our clients and customers to make smarter fraud prevention decisions. That's where we need to be. Our other question here, does Marcher, the mobile malware we talk about, still work if you have Face ID enabled? And sadly, the answer is yes in many, many cases, because you may have logged into your phone with Face ID, but the step-up authentication that the fraudster is going to encounter when he tries to log into your account is going to prompt a one-time passcode to your phone that's what he's going to steal, and he already has admin privileges on your phone, which means it doesn't matter whether you've opened your phone with your face or not. So you're in a rough spot with that. The real key there, and all of you know this, is moving away from one-time passcodes as our step-up authentication mechanism. I'm a much bigger believer in things like push notifications. Those are not associated with your phone number. They're associated with your physical device, and so they cannot be compromised in the same way. Or using physical tokens, things like YubiKeys. Many of us are using these now. Much safer way of authenticating. All right, ladies, this has been so much fun. It has been just such a pleasure to spend this afternoon with you. I will close just by, again, Diana, you were exactly right. You are all heroes in my book, and we are really, really fortunate to have each other in this space, caustic and dangerous as it may seem on a regular basis. With these ranks in our employ, I know we're going to find ourselves in good shape. So thank you so much, ladies.
Wow, that was wonderful. Oh my goodness, who learned a few new things today? All of today, and just even in this session. Thank you all for coming. We're wrapping up our 2023 Women's Summit, and I have to say, every year I say it's my favorite one, but I think this really is my favorite one. We have any other announcements that you?
So those of us here in DC, we will be having a reception over in the East Hub right after this. Those of you online and here in DC, again, watch for that email with the survey about this event. We really want to hear your feedback. We want to keep making these bigger and better every year. The on-demand will be available next month for those of you that have the virtual access. You'll receive an email with instructions on how to access that. I think the last thing is just gratitude, right? Thank you all for spending today with us here and online. Thank you to Kelly for sharing your story with us. Thank you to Rachel for sharing your giant brain and your amazing heels with us. I will forever be in awe of your ability to just walk and talk like that. It's amazing. Thank you to all the panel participants for the amazing discussions that we had today. And thank you, each and every one of you, for what you do and what you bring to the fight against fraud. I think that concludes our event. Thank you all.